The question of who should pick up the Batman mantle after Bruce Wayne has been a popular topic of discussion amongst fans of the character for quite some time. The scope of the topic has only grown over the years in relation to the expanding size of the Bat family and the progression of some of the more prominent members. Some have reached heights that allow them to cement their own mythos and supporting cast, while others have been stuck in a weird state of limbo when it comes to the characterization. Everybody's gonna have their favorites in terms of who should be the next Batman. Some would be better than others depending on the circumstance of Bruce no longer being able to pick up the cape and cowl, but I wanted to look at who would ideally be the best candidate to become Batman in the current mainline DC Comics continuity, and if the decision would actually benefit that hero's character. So if Bruce were to, say, retire or be permanently killed off, who would pick up the mantle or be the main figurehead of Gotham's vigilantes in the long run, not just as a temporary replacement? Obviously, DC would never do this, as Bruce Wayne being the current Batman is way too profitable, and mainstream comic superheroes of that caliber would never face permanent changes to such an extent, but it's still a fun topic to think about nonetheless. An immediate option that's more than likely to appear in people's minds is Dick Grayson, the golden boy of the Bat family. I mean, out of all the Bat kids, he's got the most experience under his belt.
Let's just say that after running this team for a year, I'm peckish for a little action.
It's not all that surprising considering he's actually taken up the mantle on more than one occasion in the main continuity. Dick as Batman isn't limited to some alternate future timeline or Earth in the multiverse. He's shown great promise as a hero to solidify him as an effective candidate as the next Batman. The first major instance of Dick becoming the Dark Knight happened in Batman Prodigal, the story where Bruce asks Dick to take his place temporarily after the events of Nightfall, as Bruce is still recovering. This happened after he had to forcefully reclaim the title from John Paul Valley, who went a little cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs during his time as Batman. For a short period, Dick Grayson and Tim Drake stayed in Wayne Manor and were the Batman and Robin duo. Dick did a pretty good job as the Caped Crusader, apprehending criminals on the loose like Two-Face, Ratcatcher, and the Ventriloquist with the help of Tim as Robin. Bruce didn't want to go to Dick initially to take his place after his back was broken, because Bruce assumed Dick wanted to make a name for himself and escape Bruce's shadow. Dick's second outing as Batman is more significant and comes up a lot more in conversation, because when you take into account the mentality of the characters during that time frame, most of them believed that Bruce was actually dead after Final Crisis. In their eyes, it really was about the right person picking up the mantle in the long run. His second time as Batman is when Damian Wayne officially became the fifth Robin and fought alongside Dick until the start of the New 52, where Dick returned to being Nightwing and Bruce became the primary Batman of Gotham. If we're simply going off of statements and accomplishments in the source material, it's been made evidently clear that Dick Grayson is the most competent candidate to fill in Bruce's shoes. He's trained under and has known Bruce the longest. He probably understands him better than anyone else besides Alfred. Arguably almost as good as him in hand-to-hand combat, as Dick's acrobatic background makes him a force to be reckoned with on the field. He'd incorporate his own fighting style and sometimes rock his signature eskrima sticks as Batman. In terms of how others felt about Dick as Batman, Jim Gordon admitted that most of his officers actually preferred Dick over Bruce as the Dark Knight. Dick always portrayed a grand sense of optimism and wanted to see the best in people. One of his greatest character strengths is his ability to put his trust in others. When Bruce officially returned from his time-traveling adventures thanks to Darkseid's Omega effect, he wanted Dick to remain in the Batman role and allowed him and Damian to be the dynamic duo of Gotham, while Bruce ventured the globe to expand Batman Incorporated. Batman's detective skills wouldn't take much of a hit with Dick in the role, as stories like Black Mirror by Scott Snyder showcase his effectiveness as a detective. While Dick would be a great temporary replacement in an emergency situation, or if Bruce were to die in the current modern timeline, Dick being Batman isn't something he would be committed to in the long term. Bruce's final message to Dick before his disappearance in Final Crisis was for him to not take up the mantle, as he believed Nightwing and Robin would be enough to carry the torch. But this stemmed from underestimating the significance of Batman's presence in Gotham and the psychological effects Batman's absence would have on the city's criminals. The whole point of becoming Nightwing was to escape Bruce's shadow and fulfill Bruce's hopes of Dick overcoming his trauma in ways he couldn't. Bruce has acknowledged on multiple occasions that Dick wanted to build a life of his own and not worry about carrying such a heavy burden. Being the next Batman wasn't one of Bruce's desires because he believed Dick would surpass him someday.
Robin needed to help bring the men who murdered his family to justice.
So he could turn out like you?
So that he wouldn't.
I always expected to grow up and become him. The thing that drives him to sacrifice everything for the sake of his mission. That's not me. I don't want to be Batman anymore.
Red Hood fans might get heated after hearing this, but in all honesty, Jason Todd is arguably the second worst choice out of the characters that'll be mentioned in this video to become the next Batman. Gotta seize any opportunity to partake in some Red Hood slander.
Wait a minute. I'm not gonna like this, am I?
Nope.
Jason was actually the first to take the Batman mantle for himself after Bruce's supposed death, going on a killing spree in the Battle for the Cowl storyline. He had no desire in abiding by Batman's moral code and was killing common criminals left and right after the inmates declared it open season on Gotham after learning of Batman's disappearance. His foolishness is what led to Nightwing putting a stop to his antics and rightfully taking the cowl. This and his other attempt in Grant Morrison's Batman and Robin run to become the sole protector of Gotham pre-New 52 failed miserably.
I've looked to my right, Deji. Look to my left, AJ. These partners stink of poo.
Obviously, he wouldn't go to such extreme lengths in today's stories, and he has gotten better since then. Jason's ideology at the time revolved around him using his anger to get what he deemed as the necessary results in his crime spree. It was less centered on allowing the Batman symbol to become more of a hopeful symbol or inspiring others to do good. He thought Batman's alliance with the GCPD, for example, was a liability. This version of Jason was too much of a loose cannon, and his eagerness to apprehend criminals using more brutal tactics would lead him to harm anyone he thought would get in his way, spending the time to challenge those who weren't even considered a threat. A major problem Red Hood has faced over the past decade is the cycle of character progression then regression. One writer would try to develop Jason's character, only for the next writer to come in and have him butt heads with Batman again, or regain the urge to kill the Joker. He'd go from using guns to not using them repeatedly, abiding by Batman's no-kill rule, not abiding by his no-kill rule, rinse and repeat. I don't really envision a reality where Jason is emotionally mature enough to carry such a burden of being Batman when he constantly gets in the way of his own progression, or at least with how he is currently. That could change in the future if DC was actually consistent with Jason, but I honestly feel as if he'd prefer to venture out as his own hero, going by the persona Jason believes he made for himself that wasn't defined by Batman or his tragic end thanks to the Joker. It would probably do wonders for his character to move out of Gotham and cement himself as his own man on his own terms, without having to worry about the judgment from his friends and family. Given the amount of times Jason has butt heads with Batman or other Bat family members like Nightwing or Damian, whether it be due to extreme methods of Jason or a difference in morality. I don't even know why the family would agree to allow Jason to become the prominent protector of Gotham. Someone like Nightwing would objectively be the better option. Is he as good of a fighter as Dick?
Nope.
Is he as good of a detective?
Nope.
Does he have as much social intelligence to get along with other crime fighters as effectively?
Nope.
If he can actually be consistent with his characterization and not flip-flop every 2 years, then maybe we can have a conversation. Now onto the third canonical Robin and candidate, Tim Drake.
Distraction went off as planned, Robin. Thanks. Just happy it worked.
Dick and Jason weren't the only two to wear a Batman costume during the events of Battle for the Cowl. Tim Drake briefly wore a batsuit to put a stop to Jason masquerading as Batman since Dick didn't want to be Batman initially. Tim is often regarded as the best detective out of the Robins, and is stated to have the best analytical and tactical mind amongst Batman's partners, via multiple statements from Batman himself and others around him. The emphasis on his intelligence comes from both guidebooks and the comic panels themselves. Given how much he's accomplished with his mind at such a young age, dating back to deducing the identities of Batman and Nightwing at just 9 years old, his trajectory would have him inevitably surpass Bruce as a detective whenever he comes of age, or in a hypothetical future where he becomes Batman. He understands greatly the importance of Batman's mission and why he needs a Robin, as he studied Batman and Robin intensely during his upbringing and kept track of their efforts. Tim sought out the role after witnessing what the death of Jason did to Bruce emotionally, and how Batman was losing his way after failing to convince Dick to return to the Robin mantle. Tim served as Robin longer than anyone else who took on the role in post-crisis. There are two notable storylines in main continuity where Tim encounters a future version of himself that becomes Batman. The first instance took place in the Titans Tomorrow story arc in the Teen Titans run by Jeff Johns, where the Titans accidentally end up 10 years into the future after some time travel shenanigans with the Legion of Superheroes. Some of their future counterparts end up bearing the titles of their mentors, so Tim is Batman, Connor Kent is Superman, Cassie Sandsmark is Wonder Woman, and Bart Allen is the Flash. Past Tim as Robin never imagined himself becoming Batman and wondered what would even drive him to take on the mantle to begin with. This future version of himself leads the Titans and is a pretty hardcore character. Bruce and many other heroes in his timeline died during some crisis event, which led to Tim taking matters into his own hands. The future Titans would enforce their sense of justice by any means necessary and didn't care much for morality. Future Tim would abandon his mentor's moral code and go as far as carrying the gun that murdered Thomas and Martha Wayne.
Jesus Christ.
The future Tim seen in the Detective Comics Rebirth run was slightly different when it came to how and why he became Batman. Dick took on the mantle first, but eventually moved on and started a family. Jason lost the will to live, and Damian nearly burned Gotham to the ground as Batman. Tim as Batman is basically the whole perception surrounding Batman's prep time personified. He's planned for every possible outcome and keeps what he needs to win battles on his suit at all times. He's gone out of his way to fight training programs that were based on the movesets of the other Robins in their prime for 15 years. Once he made his way to the present day Gotham and realized he could change the future, he attempted to kill Batwoman as a means of preventing his future and saving his past self from the burden of becoming Batman, as that's something he never wanted. Apparently, Batwoman's actions led to the events that create the future Tim comes from. On top of being very vocal about not wanting to become Batman, I think another important factor about modern Tim is his desire to live aspects of a normal life. This didn't end up happening, but in the early issues of the Detective Comics Rebirth run, Tim initially wanted to attend university full-time and step away from being Robin temporarily. In Matt Fraction's Batman run, he's supposedly taking a break from being Robin so that he could spend more time with Bernard, as he doesn't know that Bernard already knows that he's Robin. Not to say he wouldn't remain a crime fighter, but it seems like writers nowadays want to convey Tim's desire for normalcy to some extent, which could contrast with the grander duties of being a future Batman. Arguably the most popular candidate amongst fans thanks to the success of the show is Terry McGinnis, who was the main character of the Batman Beyond cartoon set in the DC animated universe.
In my mind, that's not what I call myself.
What do you call yourself? I suppose you would. But that's my name now.
The concept of Batman Beyond in DC Comics is a little weird because there have been a few different continuities spanning across multiple titles over the years. The Batman Beyond volumes from 1999 to 2001 are set in the same continuity as the Batman Beyond cartoon in the DCAU, hence the similarities in the art style. The Batman Beyond titles from 2010 to 2015 were established to be a part of Earth 12, one of the 52 designated Earths in the DC multiverse. This Earth is practically identical to the DCAU and uses the cartoon as a baseline for its canon and characters, but there are some slight differences and a few references to characters from the mainline comic canon. If we were to use this as a baseline, since the DCAU was where Batman Beyond originated, the conception of Terry McGinnis wouldn't really work in the main Earth comics where the prominent Bat family members are established. Batman Beyond as a concept was dependent on Bruce not really having any contact with his former friends and allies at his old age. The only few who were prominent crime fighters in his inner circle in the DCAU were Dick, Tim, and Barbara. In the comics, Bruce has gone through the cycle of learning to accept the help of others and not pushing away those he cares about time and time again, to the point where if I'm led to believe that the main canonical version does something similar to what he did in Batman Beyond, taking into account his character development, it would honestly just be backpedaling. He's developed such a strong bond with this family, and I just can't see him ending up alone in the canon future. Could you imagine comic Bruce over the age of 40 talking about the others couldn't handle it, Alfred. I have to protect Gotham on my own terms.
How old is your ass?
41.
A grown-ass Goofy. Remember I just told you?
We've all had to endure crappy stories in recent years like Gotham War or Hush 2, where those amongst the Bat family turn on Bruce for one reason or another. Many comics have emphasized how much Bruce cares for his family and his ideal world being one where they're all happy. There's also the elephant in the room of Terry McGinnis' origin that was shown in the Justice League Unlimited episode Epilogue, where it was revealed that Amanda Waller believed the world will always need a Batman, as Bruce was getting older and aging out of his prime. Thus, Cadmus extracted some of his DNA to overwrite Warren McGinnis' reproductive DNA with Bruce's, making Terry Batman's biological son. Hypothetically carrying over this concept to the mainline comic titles, would any individual or organization feel compelled to go through all of that when Bruce already has a biological son who was raised by assassins since birth and has since gotten rid of his killer instinct? The League of Assassins would have already beat Amanda Waller to the punch. The Batman Beyond titles from 2015 onward were set in a possible future spanning off the timeline of the main DC Comics Earth, rather than being a continuation of the DCAU. So this new version of Batman Beyond would take into account characters like Damian Wayne, Jason Todd, Duke Thomas, etc., and not utilize the whole Terry being the genetic son of Bruce concept. In the 2016 Batman Beyond Rebirth title, Damian becomes the new Ra's al Ghul and head of the League of Assassins. Since this was written during the Rebirth era, Damian's characterization as Robin in the mainline comics back then was being used as a basis. But given the substantial character growth he's received in recent years, I don't think him leading the League of Assassins would be the route he would take in the future, which I'll cover more in a little bit. That being said, a valuable asset to Terry's character is how trusting he is of others when compared to Bruce, and how he's willing to balance his personal life, involving being a high school or college student, suited in having relationships with his duties as Batman. The Beyond suit's capabilities are far more advanced than the typical arsenal seen from the Bat family in present day, which would be obvious considering the events of Batman Beyond take place decades into the future in Neo Gotham. I know for a fact that Cassandra Cain fans would be on my ass if I didn't mention her at least once in this video. Cassandra Cain has adopted a few aliases over the years, but she is best known for her role as Batgirl. What makes Cassandra an interesting candidate is how dedicated and devoted she is in preserving the true meaning of the Bat symbol, and utilizing what she's learned in her tragic upbringing to help those in need. Her father, David Cain, was a member of the League of Assassins and wanted to create the perfect assassin and bodyguard for Ra's al Ghul. David Cain went out of his way to only teach Cassandra different forms of combat, to the point where she was never taught how to read, write, or even speak any language. This was done with the intent of adapting the language center of the brain to interpret physical movement as a language. She was taught to master every weapon and form of combat imaginable. At the age of 8, she was sent out to kill a man and was horrified by the result of her first kill at such a young age, resulting in her fleeing from her father. Since then, her life has been an attempt to atone for that act, developing a strong sense of empathy and compassion for those in need, often putting her life on the line to protect citizens in danger. Barbara Gordon noted that Cassandra seemed to resemble Bruce as Batman the most out of anyone she's encountered by that point. Like I mentioned earlier, her loyalties in crime fighting lie more with the symbol of the Bat than any one individual, and with preserving Bruce's morals in order to effectively deliver justice in Gotham. She wants to take over if the opportunity were to ever be presented to her. When Batwoman seemingly killed Clayface with a bullet that was designed to destabilize the molecular bonds that he used to manipulate his form, Cass was furious at Batwoman as she had sympathy for Clayface when he was losing control of his mind and turned into a raging monster, deeming her unworthy of the Bat symbol on her chest as it's supposed to represent picking the better alternative rather than just choosing the option that results in killing. Because of her upbringing, Cass is a big advocate for redemption and giving those a second chance. She's proven herself to be a worthy member of the family, and before the New 52, Bruce expressed his desire of wanting to illegally adopt her. Whether you love him or hate him, we gotta talk about the actual blood son of the Bat, Damian Wayne.
I assure you, he's yours.
Don't look so stunned, Father. I thought you'd be taller.
I know a lot of people are going to immediately dismiss Damian as a viable option, mainly those who have only been exposed to the character through adaptations and have read like 2 mainline comics at best that feature Damian. I don't care what he did in Injustice, I don't care how he's depicted in the DC animated movie universe films. We're talking comics here. When he was properly introduced to Batman and the Bat family in Grant Morrison's run at the age of 10, Damian thought it was his birthright to succeed his father due to what he was taught by the League of Assassins. Early on, the idea of Damian becoming Batman in the future was practically treated like it was DEFCON 3. Grant Morrison created a future timeline set 15 years after what was then present day, set in a nightmarish Gotham. Bruce and Dick had died at some point, resulting in Damian picking up the mantle when he got older. At age 14, he sold his soul to the devil in exchange for enhanced abilities like immortality and accelerated healing. This apocalyptic future that led to the destruction of Gotham hasn't been emblematic of a possible canon future in a while because of how much Damian has grown as a character since the Morrison era. In recent years, DC has actually been consistent on the idea of Damian becoming Batman in the future in a non-problematic light. During the Dark Crisis event, Damian stumbled upon a character named Dr. Multiverse, who had the ability to see alternate reality versions of those around her and determine which is their home reality. What made Damian stand apart from the rest was how becoming Batman was a uniquely consistent path for him across the different variant timelines. The current Wonder Woman run showed flash forwards of Wonder Woman's daughter Trinity hanging out with John Kent and Damian Wayne, who would go on to become the main versions of Superman and Batman. The canonicity of DC's future can and has been easily retconned with the works of several writers. A lot of the stories that revolve around future events often aren't set in stone. I mean, we've seen stories where Tim Drake in the future is Batman, Future State was a possible canon future with the Jace Fox as the new Batman, but I think what makes Damian's case different is how consistent DC has been with him inevitably taking up the mantle. In terms of his physical and mental prowess, Damian would logically utilize his time under the League of Assassins and his tutelage under Bruce to his advantage. Bruce passed on everything he knew onto Damian, allowing him to put what he's learned from both sides of his family to good use. Even now at the age of 14, he's already proven himself to be one of the greatest hand-to-hand fighters in the DC universe, so you know for a fact this kid is going to be insane by the time he reaches adulthood. Damian's detective skills have been shown to be very impressive, and he's learned some new tricks thanks to his time as Robin. What's arguably more important is how much he's developed a very close father-son relationship with Bruce since the New 52. Bruce is openly very proud of how far Damian has come and believes he has fully earned the Robin mantle. He wants him to fully have a life in Gotham outside of just being a vigilante. City. Damian has had a good understanding of Gotham and its people, patrolling parts of the city on his own and learning new secrets about its inhabitants to feel more connected to it. His sense of compassion and wanting to heal others has grown immensely as he's gotten older. After reading some of Thomas Wayne's journal and failing to save a little girl from being injured, Damian became inspired to do volunteer work at the same hospital Thomas Wayne worked at, with the goal of becoming a doctor like his paternal grandfather, finding it to be a suitable path for himself outside of just being a crime fighter. This is compelling because it shows someone with Damian's upbringing developing a profound sense of compassion and a genuine desire to help others. He was explicitly taught not to grow too attached, and that strong feelings for others were a sign of weakness.
I was being groomed to lead humanity.
How do you hope to lead humanity when you've never been a part of it?
From what I heard, your childhood wasn't a lot of fun either.
But I also had people around me to help. As far as I can tell, all you've had are trainers. There's a difference, Damian.
Last and certainly least, we have Tim, or Jace Fox's Batman. He's the oldest son of Lucius Fox and brother to Luke Fox, better known as Batwing. My opinions on Jace Fox have not changed. I still don't care for this character, and he is without a doubt the least remarkable option here. I know it seems a little suspicious how on Black History Month the only black man to be a contender is being thrown under the bus like this.
1,000 lashes and your melanin has been snatched. You have now been completely dismissed from the African race. We hope Caucasian Nation will accept you as one of their own because your melanin is snatched.
I'm not a raccoon, don't worry, there's an actual good reason as to why I feel this way. Jace Fox was created for the Future State lineup of books, which became one of the many potential futures for DC that eventually ended up as non-canon. There, he became the bearer of the Batman mantle after Bruce was on the run and presumed dead. A security force had taken over Gotham and declared any vigilantism to be illegal. He was eventually brought into the main canon books set in the present day and became Batman there as well. So currently, there are two Batmen with Bruce in Gotham and Jace Fox in New York. It's easy to forget that DC established this because they've practically done nothing with the character after his solo book got cancelled after 19 issues. Jace is very disassociated from the Bat family. He almost never pops up in any Bat family events, nor is he ever really mentioned. Writers don't care enough to utilize his character in any meaningful way. My biggest issue with Jace becoming the next Batman is how he has a non-existent relationship with Bruce Wayne. Because he has practically zero connection to Bruce other than being Lucius Fox's son, he wouldn't have as strong of a grasp of the importance of Bruce's mission and what it means to bear the mantle. You're gonna have a tough time finding at least one comic panel of Bruce and Jace having a conversation with one another, or Bruce even acknowledging Jace's existence outside of Future State. In the Future State timeline, it was a little more justified for him to be Batman since Bruce was a fugitive and no one in the Bat family had picked up the mantle. But once he was carried over in the present day man canon, it genuinely made no sense as to why there needed to be another Batman. His existence is pretty much redundant. Now, sure, there have been multiple characters who have simultaneously shared the same mantle, like there being at least two Flashes, Green Arrows, Superman, or both Damian and Tim serving as Robin. However, in all of those examples, the secondary character trained under the primary version for an extended period of time. In the case of the Robins, both Damian and Tim were trained directly by Bruce. In this instance, there really is no justification for the two Batmen because, like I said earlier, Jace Fox practically has no connection to Bruce Wayne and has barely interacted with him in the main canon. When there were two Batman with Dick and Bruce, the reasoning was that Bruce wanted to venture the globe to expand Batman Incorporated, while Damian and Dick remained in Gotham, since they had already proven themselves as a competent dynamic duo. And even with the fact that there were two Batman pre-New 52, it didn't last long. Not to mention, Jace Fox is the least qualified individual listed in this video. There's no strong showcase of his detective skills or hand-to-hand combat being on par with the rest of the family. Dick, Jason, Tim, Damian, and Cass outskill him in almost every regard. There's just nothing present in the books to make a strong argument as to why he should be Bruce's successor. DC does not care for this character, as evident through his lack of appearances or even acknowledgement, and the other crime fighters mentioned in this video have more experience and connections to the primary Bat family lineup. This nigga's legendary? Based on what? What has he done? How long has he been in the game? Who the hell knows who Jace Fox is outside of the insufferable fanbase on Twitter.com? Okay, let's wrap this up and go over everything we know. Out of everyone here, Dick Grayson has already proven himself to be a competent Batman, garnering respect from some of Bruce's closest allies like Jim Gordon, officers from the GCPD, Alfred, and even Bruce himself. In the heat of the moment, he'd be the logical choice. but with a huge asterisk next to it, as neither Bruce nor Dick would want this to be the outcome in the long term. Dick already built himself to be a great crime fighter as Nightwing and sought out to escape Bruce's shadow. Jason Todd struggles with characterization probably the most out of anyone here, and with the fact that DC doesn't really know what to do with him. I don't see his character journey leading down the path of becoming the Caped Crusader. He'd be more interested in fighting crime his own way as Red Hood. Tim Drake has the intellectual prowess that's been stated to surpass Bruce one day, but he's not really interested in becoming Batman once he gets older. Terry McGinnis to me would only work if his existence is set a proper amount of decades into the future, where the other Bat family characters have aged out of being crime fighters. If it's only like 20 to 30 years into the current future, that's a no bueno. Even in the case of the other characters aging out, who's to say someone like Dick or Damian won't have children of their own who will become crime fighters and take up the mantle once they come of age? DC hasn't done anything meaningful with Jace Fox since the cancellation of his ongoing title. Writers don't acknowledge him and his existence is pretty redundant. That leaves the two best candidates being Cassandra Cain and Damian Wayne. Cass has expressed interest in wanting to take over for Bruce and has the proper dedication and physical training to carry out his mission. Personally, however, I'd give the edge to Damian as I think it makes more thematic sense and he has a better showcase of being more likely to take up the mantle. DC has consistently shown that he's set to be the canonical future Batman. Reason why I'd put someone like Damian above Cass is because I believe he has a better understanding of Bruce's mission, having spent more time with him and building a stronger personal connection with his father. Having been taught everything Bruce knows, which would include detective work and any other skills that come with crime fighting. If you wanted to argue that Cass is a better fighter, Damian is just more adept at other fields such as detective work and a multitude of other subjects due to his League of Assassins training. He's also picked up things from his time as Robin when Nightwing was Batman and developed a strong brotherhood with Dick. Not only does Damian have a deep understanding of Gotham and its inhabitants, he also demonstrates a desire to help the city both as a healer and a vigilante, continuing the Wayne legacy by following in Thomas Wayne's footsteps as a doctor. So if I were to grant the title to any of the Bat family characters in the long run, I'm giving it to the son of the Bat.
I'm his son.
You certainly are.
But that's just my take on the matter. There are definitely some arguments to be had about the legitimacy of other characters, and I'm definitely not opposed to someone like Cass taking over after Bruce. Who would you have become the next Batman in DC Comics? Would it be anyone from this video, or would you prefer that no one takes up the mantle after Bruce? People are bound to have different answers due to the intricate nature of the character's mythos. That's just bound to happen when you're the greatest superhero of all time.